Welcome to Mel and Matt's Obsolete Movies, the podcast where we revisit movies from our 20 plus years of collecting films on obsolete formats. You can also think of this podcast as being about films from the VHS era, though we don't necessarily watch them always on VHS. And our film for this episode is entitled Series 7, The Contenders. And we got it, and this is from 1999?
I think it's a 2001 film.
Oh, 2000. Oh, so we do actually have a 21st century film on VHS. And we watched it on VHS, getting it from the West Coast Video in Squirrel Hill as it was closing. And one of the reasons why we got it, they were doing their closing liquidation sale. And I think we went in, and I think this was the only good movie left.
Yes, I think you're right.
And I think that's part of the mystique of this film, for us anyway, is it's a great film no one's seen.
This is true. It's probably one of our most obscure. I mean, we have some pretty obscure
things on this podcast. And it is this is our 50th episode.
It is. Woohoo. We made it to 50.
We made it to 50. Sporadically, of course. Taking a few months off here and there, being pretty good for a while, building up following, and then disappearing for no explanation. And for our 50th movie, we could have done something beloved that people would know about and be like, oh, yes, I have similar opinions on those films. But I think that's just not our style.
Yes.
It's not our style, so...
We did have the discussion what we should do for if this is a 50th episode worthy, and we decided to go for it.
We decided to go... My mind was pretty made up before we even started, and before we realized it was our 50th episode. But yeah, Series 7, The Contenders, from 2000-2001, directed by Daniel Minahan, who went on to direct episodes of Game of Thrones, House of Cards... True Blood.
So he's been a very active director since this film, but has not really done a ton of film work. It's been mainly television and cable series.
Yes, and other people got on. Will Arnett is in this film.
Who's probably the most famous person.
Yes.
Will Arnett should be pretty well known to most people.
Yes.
He's been in Semi-Pro and a bunch of other films.
Yes. But a film...
But a very brief cameo. He's only on screen for
Well, he is the narrator,
He's the narrator, but you only see him
He's only in one scene.
Yeah.
And a film that, I think not a lot of people seen. It was shot for a very low budget.
Yes.
It was shot on video, which also, it has a look, which is fine watching on VHS. However, what makes this film sort of remarkable for me is... that it predicts the country we're now living in. And I think it's a much better film watching it now. We'll get to that in a moment, because I think we need to explain the premise. Or the plot of this film is a near-future America.
Yes.
So, whatever you want to put that at. Where there's a reality TV series called The Contenders. And it is in its 7th season. And the idea of The Contenders is that 5 people are randomly chosen according to a government-issued ID number that's drawn like the lottery. And those 5 people must kill each other in regular old American society.
Right.
And the last person to survive goes on to the next series. And I guess if you live through 2 seasons, you get to not play the game anymore. But, so the first scene of the film, which goes so hard, is a pregnant woman going into a convenience store and blowing a guy away, shooting him in the back, and then asking if there's bean dip at the convenience store.
I mean, she is 8 months pregnant.
She is 8 months pregnant. She has cravings. And once, I think... Honestly, seeing the film, it was introduced to us. It was an article in College Music Journal, CMJ, College Media Journal's New Music Monthly magazine. They would do one film review a month.
Yeah.
And it was like, check this movie out. And we did. And it was kind of fun, and there was a fun premise to it, and I remembered liking it then, and there's a great, actually, quote from the Peter Travers Rolling Stone review right on the VHS box. Think Dr. Strangelove meets Network. It is a surrealist, funny film, and I remember enjoying it then, and I think we might have watched it sometime when we were living in the old house, maybe around 2010 or so.
Yeah, I mean...
However, watching this film again...
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, you also think about it, too, because Survivor would have come out in 2000, the Survivor series.
Yes.
Cops would have been on, but, like, this whole immersion in reality TV, and then, of course, not only just reality TV, you have YouTube and TikTok, and that hadn't happened yet. And so for him to make this film...
Yeah.
Just based on kind of maybe Survivor, possibly.
And the Real World, and Big Brother hadn't happened, which also had a, who's going to be the last person to hold on.
And like a Battle
clairvoyant, yeah.
And Battle Royale would have come out the year before, but... would they have really known about that film?
Yeah, and you wouldn't... And the Hunger Games, of course, which borrows heavily from Battle Royale, was later.
It was later.
As well. And so it's like, yeah, this premise, as they say in the world of journalism, this premise has legs.
And, for me, it's a more brutal premise because, not that Hunger Games or Battle Royale isn't brutal, but they happen in a separate space, right? So, Battle Royale, the students are taken to an isolated island, I believe it is. Hunger Games, they're taken to an isolated location. This just happens in everyday life. So you could be at the gas station and someone is shooting down another contender. Yeah. And it just happens in the world around you.
Yeah, which I think is part of the surrealism of that first scene where... Yeah, this guy's buying a pack of cigarettes or something. Dawn, the pregnant returning champion, walks into the convenience store, shoots this man dead. He shoots him back, he falls. She shoots him several times to make sure he's dead. And the clerk is relatively unfazed. He's worried about the mess and the blood.
Right. He asks her, what are you going to do about the body?
And she's like, do we have people for that or whatever? He got bean dip. Which I think also in terms of, in 2024, in terms of satire, I mean, living in the country that perfected the mass shooting, and to the point where now mass casualty shooting events almost aren't news, right? There's the Daniel Schneider line about if it's news, it's actually not going to kill you.
Yeah.
Right, we worry about fantastical things on the news, whereas, falling off ladders and heart disease, that's what kills people, but that's not news. We are turning to a point in this country where almost you could miss a mass shooting if you're not looking at your phone that day.
Right.
And which again is also part of just, I think, the wicked clairvoyant satire of this movie.
Absolutely. And there is a scene where a violent event happens in a movie theater.
A movie theater and a shopping mall.
And at that time, that was in the early 2000s.
We had Columbine, which I think changed the national consciousness, but we didn't think it would become the new normal.
Exactly. And when I was growing up, a mall called Springfield Mall, there was a mass shooter when I was growing up I guess it happened in the maybe late 80s, early 90s. But that thought of a mass shooting wasn't the norm. And
then the DC sniper and stuff like that. All of that stuff had not happened yet. So the premises is this reality show. You're binge watching this marathon on cable,
which predicted binge watching.
Right? So we have Dawn, the returning champion, who is 8 months pregnant. We have Connie, the sort of late 50s, maybe early 60s, retirement's around the corner. religious nurse.
Ultra conservative
Religious nurse, which is another clairvoyant thing we need to talk about. Tony, the laid off kind of white guy, 39-year-old white guy with kids, laid off asbestos cleaner upper, who's been displaced by the new economy.
Yeah.
Which is also very, prescient. Lindsay, who has helicopter parents.
Yep, 18-year-old with helicopter parents.
And Jeff, who has terminal cancer, but, plot twist, this season, series 7 of The Contenders takes place in Dawn's hometown that she left years ago, and she has a history with Jeff.
Exactly. And there's actually a scene that we'll talk about. But there's also the old man, Franklin.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about Franklin.
Who is not happy about being on the show and tries
and who is a conspiracy theorist.
Yes,
an elderly white male conspiracy theorist who lives in a trailer.
Yeah.
Which, again, is also... now he's a mainstream character. Now he's politically organized. Now you gotta wonder where he was on January 6th, 2021.
Exactly.
Yes.
So that's our batch of characters, and they're out to kill each other.
Yes.
To be the last person standing.
Yes, which... I don't know how much more plot we can give away with that, but that's the premise. Mm-hmm. And, of course, there's TV cameras following them everywhere. There are confessionals, like sort of real-world style, where the characters reflect on their feelings and emotions as things are happening, or as you're watching the things that happen.
Yeah.
Then you have these voiceover from the people saying, I was feeling hurt and confused at that moment, and I wasn't sure Jeff's real feelings towards me, or whatever. Which, again, is part of... Again, I hate to use the word clairvoyance in this podcast so many times, but the clairvoyance of this film, where it mentions GPS tracking.
Yes.
It mentioned, so that you have this idea that technology is really keeping track of people's movements.
There's cameras everywhere.
There's cameras everywhere. There's surveillance everywhere. At one point, a couple of the characters decide they don't want to play the game anymore. And it mentions, there's, video cameras everywhere. We were able to spot where they were.
Yeah.
This reality TV thing, and the fact that we are sort of always expected to confess.
Yes.
I'm a huge fan of the late British sociologist Zygmunt Bauman, who talks about sort of we live in this new panopticon, where it's not that we're just being watched, but, in the era of he talks about the credit report, we are always supposed to be divulging our secrets. And if you're a young person, he said this in 2006, and every time I say this to my young students, they all nod their heads, that opting out of social media is akin to social suicide.
Yeah.
So if you want to be seen, heard, present, real in the world, you must confess often, and you must not have any sort of private life. So the film has dramas big and little, as these 6 characters, the 5 new contenders and the returning champion Dawn, all have to eliminate each other to be the last person standing, in the hope that maybe they can survive the next season.
And I think the character that's... So, of course, Dawn's fascinating. But the Connie character, this conservative Christian who's a nurse, is actually a bit more menacing to me than Dawn. And so at this point, Dawn has, I believe, 10 kills already.
Yes.
And they flash back to her kills. So you actually see this very pregnant woman taking out people.
Yes.
Even grabbing someone's gun and drowning a person. This very pregnant woman.
Yes, in a toilet.
Trying to navigate this particular space. And is driven to save her child. She wants to get out of this so that she can...
And her own just sheer survival.
Yeah. Oh, so that it also has a touch of Running Man about it as well.
Yes, it does. There's a little bit of Running Man. I guess with Dawn being very pregnant, there's a touch of Fargo.
Yes, this is true. But this Connie character is very menacing, and obviously just does not refers to Dawn as trash. because she is...
Yes, definitely is this comment on sort of the moral majority
yes.
idea. I mean, now in the movie, Connie is Catholic, or comes off as Catholic.
That's true.
I think she would go to a mega church if you made this movie today.
Yeah.
But other than that, I think she's spot on. Connie and Franklin, I should say, both would be... I mean, again, he made in 2001 a film with what you would consider stereotypical Trump voter characters.
Absolutely.
In this film.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that... So, where do you want to take the conversation from here?
Oh, boy. I think, well, one of the things I want to say is, as heightened as the violence is, as surreal as the violence is, if you buy just into the premise of this as wicked social satire, while it does have, again, you have a pregnant woman going around killing people, or who herself could be killed, where, I mean, truly nothing is sacred, and I when I watch comedies, yes, comedies are funny, and we watch Netflix stand-up specials, we stream stuff in this household, we really do. Very rarely does something actually make me laugh out loud. I think my laughter is often sort of just that passive, like, oh, that was funny, that's fun, I'm feeling that endorphin rush. But to actually laugh out loud at something...
Yeah.
And I think I had 3 moments in this film.
The bean dip.
The bean dip joke. I don't remember the others, and I don't want to ruin the other ones because people need to see this film. So it's good that I forgot them. But there were at least 3 times in this film where I laughed out loud because the situation was so ridiculous, yet, like all good satire, just only a notch or 2 away from reality. And the social commentary in that. I mean, the other thing is, as much as people are watching, you, the viewer, are implicated in this film because you turned on the marathon and you're watching Series 7, The Contenders. Also, always the characters are watching cheesy action movies, and there's explosions on TV when they watch TV.
And so that's the structure of it is very interesting because it is set up like you're binge watching. So there is kind of like with Cops, like there's like interludes, like, and what's going to happen next? Those type of things happen periodically. So it does make you feel like you've sat down and turned something on to Netflix. And also with that, it gives you glimpses of what's going to happen, but it is out of context.
Yes.
So you don't know, but you'll see like, oh, Dawn's screaming. Is something happening to her? Oh, wait, that's going to come up. We'll see that happening. So you see these, there's even this moment where Dawn and Jeff meet at a football field, which is shown to you earlier. Yes. That they're going to meet on this field together.
And there's cutaways after gunshots, so you don't know who got shot.
Exactly.
Because of the 2 contenders. So it is very much, it looks like a TV series in how it was shot. And it is cut like a TV series. And there's shaky cam, like Cops, where, there's places where the contenders are running and the camera people are trying to catch up and,
Yeah.
When did the French film Man Bites Dog come out?
I think that was the late 90s. I want to say
that was the late 90s, so maybe it's not totally original, but I just thought about that.
I was thinking, actually, Man Bites Dog was 92.
Okay, so
that was rare.
So he would have had time to see that film.
Yes.
We saw Man Bites Dog, now that I think about it, before we saw Series 7 as well. But, yeah, this is America. It's funnier and weird. So, as much as, I think we've kind of... Well, we did revisit the movie in the 2020s. I think I've wanted to talk about that since the beginning. Again, I think when we watched it in probably 2001, 2002 on video, it was okay. It was fine. Revisiting the film today after, let's face it, also, we've had the reality show President.
Yes.
it's really a profound film in its ridiculousness and its wicked humor.
No, absolutely. And I think because it's shot on video, there is, of course, kind of like quality issues.
Yeah, it was not made for a lot of money.
And at that time, I think also for us, most of our viewing was kind of more prestige, even independent films that were made on a budget, but still on like 35 or higher quality film. So I think like the first time you see it, it does feel like it's a goof. Like it just kind of feels like in some ways like this kind of really silly film. Mm-hmm. But in revisiting it does have this much deeper meaning that goes with it. And even just now, thinking about some of these scenes where there is the shooting happening in public, but no one helps the contenders. Even the 18-year-old girl, her parents don't help her. Though they're helicopter parents and they drive her to the kills and make sure she has her weapons. And there's this whole funny scene where they're trying to like pump her up to go do a kill. They don't help her. So this society has been so groomed
and desensitized
to the violence that no one interferes whatsoever. And even going into the mall, the security really doesn't bat an eye that she has on a Kevlar vest and she has weapons with her.
And she says, "Oh, I'm a contender."
And it's just like, oh, okay, go right through. So it just shows you just how deeply desensitized everyone is to it. And there's some sort of, they don't explain what happened in the film, but it's obviously some sort of like either state of emergency or a dictatorship or something that has happened in the United States that people are comfortable allowing the show to go on.
Yes.
And people are comfortable allowing people to be killed
for entertainment,
and are comfortable with it happening right next to them.
Yes.
And so that's dark when you really think about it.
Yeah.
So there's like some silliness to this film because the premise does seem really kind of like very dark, very funny, but it's darker than you realize.
Yeah, which also, I mean, to think about if, some came out then, it predates 9/11.
Yeah.
America made a turn on 9/11 and we've never looked back and we've never really course corrected.
Yeah.
And looking at what the 2024 presidential election is going to look like, we are not going to course correct until at least 2028 in this country, at least.
Yeah.
Which is a distressing thought. But yeah, that sort of permanent state of emergency. And I also should mention, you know what? It is NFL Championship Sunday. We're recording this. Where again, we know more about things like CTE. We know more things about NFL player injuries. Mm-hmm. And how many players are permanently scarred, damaged, destroyed by a game. Still really like it. We're one of the few people probably in this town not watching this game right now.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think that part of the social satire of the violence of our sport, I think also the social satire, and it makes me wonder if perhaps the filmmaker was familiar with Jean Baudrillard and the idea of, as he calls it, the Gulf War does not exist because it was a war that was shot on TV and was presented to the world on television as a TV event.
Yeah.
And we've had several of those wars now.
Yeah.
That sort of radical desensitization.
And you think of, like, if you look at Battle Royale, they actually do rebel against the situation. Hunger Games, they rebel against the situation. No one rebels against the situation
until very late, and that's kind of a failed rebellion.
It's a failed rebellion, and you think like
spoiler alert. Sorry.
The Hunger Games is like a full-on rebellion where they get groups of people too, but there's no... Well, for Handmaid's Tale, if you've watched the series or read the book, actually the initial ending, there isn't any hope for June, but they added this additional chapter where it's kind of like everything's okay for like an American audience. Everything's not okay. There's no moment in this film where you're like, everything's going to be fine. There's going to be
we are going to course correct.
There's going to be a secret underground of people who help get the Contenders to Canada or Mexico so they don't have to deal with this. There's no sense of that.
A film like The Running Man has that.
Right.
Inevitably, the Contenders and The Running Man win over America.
Yeah. And you think the film does not end... So, a typical film like this for a U.S. market, Jeff and Dawn would ride off into the sunset. They would cross over into Canada and not have to be a part of this anymore.
No.
Or there would have been some underground network that saves them and gets... But no.
The end of Series 7 is the beginning of Series 8.
Exactly. And so there's no hope. There's no hope for it. This is just now the new reality for Americans, and it's just a new reality that everyone has just accepted. And it's going on 7 years now, right? Because it's Series 7. So it's been going on for this really
long time. You think there's, they're minor celebrities, and Dawn gets ultrasound for her baby, and the ultrasound tech is like, oh, and hey, could you sign this and date it?
Yeah.
So it's, memorabilia and yeah.
Yeah. Even for, so Dawn is estranged from her family, is what we find out, and she goes to visit them, and there ends up being a big blow up, but her niece runs to her and is like, I saw you on TV, I love you. And that was like...
Yes, I think that was one of the moments when I laughed really hard.
Such a cynical moment.
That this young child is watching the murder reality show and looks up to her estranged aunt.
Yes.
Yeah.
And is like, oh, I love you for who you are, right? And she is admired because she's already survived all of these kills. And she's
which is, I think, also the sort of neoliberal American cult of the individual.
Yeah.
Is that she's got the most hustle, and not that the entire premise is wrong or that the game is wrong or that everything's evil. It's that...
She has moxie.
She has moxie, and she has out-survived, 2 seasons. I guess it's 3 seasons you get to be free forever.
Yeah.
And
she's called a hero. They often, in the kind of like bumps between the scenes, she is referred to as a hero because she killed other contestants.
Yeah.
And so there's this... That's wow, right? Like how depressing is this film? And this is also probably why the film didn't do well, and there wasn't a lot of interest in the movie. Even the romance isn't great, right?
Even the romance isn't, and there's an amazing the role of the Joy Division song "Love Will Tear Us Apart," because Dawn and Jeff also have a mutual goth past.
Yeah.
Goth high school video art class past that is just also quite hilarious if you're into subcultures.
The thing about Dawn, though, that is interesting to me is that we do ultimately find out that she was kicked out of her home for having an abortion. She obviously struggled with drug issues, and so when you see her, she has her hair is like... Her roots are like 2 or 3 inches. She had, bleach blonde hair. She has these dark roots coming in. She is wearing like this gross like tie-dye jumper and doesn't like look very attractive. And your first interaction with her is her killing a person.
Yeah.
But what you kind of realize is that she actually is a good person at heart, right? She loves her child. She wants her child to live. And even the thought of you can see her roots means that she stopped dyeing her hair, because dyeing your hair is not healthy for the baby, right? So she's actually trying to do things to right by this unborn child and trying as best as she can to be a good mother to her unborn child. And often, women who have been kicked out, who don't have a support system, are viewed, and Connie says this, right? She's like the scum of the earth. She's trash. She's a horrible person. But she actually is trying really hard to be a good mother in this circumstance that she has no control over.
Yeah, which is how many Americans?
Exactly.
Yeah. So we should do our 5 big questions to close it out.
Yeah.
Question 1. Is it camp, retro, classic, or just an old movie?
Ooh, that's a good question. I feel like it has camp elements to it just because, like, the quality of the filmmaking and things like that. What do you think?
I think it's a forgotten classic. I think it's one of those movies that, despite the production values, I mean, again, I think it was like with Blair Witch and the use of VHS and the use of video to shoot. They were trying to make virtue out of necessity, and that's a little jarring. And, there's obviously not a lot of money in terms of, like, the cars and locations and actors and all of it. But, again, what a stunningly clairvoyant film. And, again, not many... I don't remember the last time I laughed out loud at a film.
So I think what's going to happen is like, for us getting into films, we started looking at, like, things from the 60s and 70s, and we're like, whoa, The Conversation, whoa, Joe, like, these films that...
And, sort of lost classics.
Lost classics.
I think this film deserves that kind of treatment.
I have a feeling in, like, 10 years, film students are going to be like, oh, Series 7. I think it will hit its time, and it is starting to get referenced as a new cult film, like a new cult classic that people should check out, though it's from 2021, so it's over 20 years old.
2020.
2020.
2001. Sorry. It's 2000. We are in the 2020s.
Sorry.
So this film's over 20 years old. We did watch it on VHS.
Yes. I apologize. Sorry.
A rental copy VHS.
But it's an older film, right?
It's an older film.
But it is getting buzz around being a cult classic.
And as it should be. And again, we've been at this is just really a recap to question 2. What about the social political distance?
So it's so relevant.
So relevant, so
today.
Real, so immediate.
Which I think was the bulk of our conversation, is that it still has meaning and relevance today, and predicted some things that we see today.
Yes, and definitely the prevalence of reality TV everywhere.
Yeah.
And you think it is this thing that maybe has started because there's a way, figuring out a way to not have to pay for writers has, like, fundamentally changed our culture and how we see ourselves and how we see others. Question 3, what about the technical distance? Whether the effects of the living technology. There are cell phones in this film.
Right, but like the old, big old brick cell phones.
Yeah.
So you have to call in when you make a kill. And so you actually have the one character, Connie, go to a payphone to call in the kill. And it's calling to like a 1-800 number.
But Dawn has a cell phone, which I think is, again, it's one of the first films, you think, going back, a really good use of a cell phone in terms of the way that transcends location, the way she's able to sort of terrorize and intimidate her other contestants, her fellow contestants, through the use of a phone.
So one of the scenes, she calls up and says there's a bomb in your house, which causes a contestant to run out. And how smart was that? That concept. So there is early cell phones, but it's like big, bulky brick cell phones.
Yes.
But that when she called it the 1-800 number from a public phone, you're like, oh yes, this
that
phone.
Was a time when we did that.
There was a time when we did that. But it does reference things like GPS, but maybe not in the way that we think of it. But
which I think it's the other thing is, though, is for me, it's like thinking about the role that has in our lives.
Yeah.
Whether it's your car, whether it's your phone, whether it's, I mean, there's allegations in the war in Gaza that, they were using cell phone data tracking to get certain people, which is, so again, that's something it's a reference I wouldn't have understood in 2001.
Yeah.
In terms of thinking about the role it could have in a person's life.
But now we know.
Where now it's almost gone the other way, where it's something we have to, and this film does make us notice it.
So the sad thing, though, for me, is that the weapons haven't really changed, right?
No.
So it's high-powered rifles and all this other stuff. So, like, the weapons they're using are the weapons that we hear about in mass shootings. So, sadly, that's just like, oh, wow, that has not changed.
Yes.
That is still available and still can harm lots of people.
Yeah, and you also do have metal detectors at the mall.
Yeah.
Saying that's a very savvy scene too. When we get those, then we'll be like, oh yeah, just like that movie Series 7. Remember when you could just walk in a mall and not have to go through a metal detector or a body scanner. Question 4: what does it mean to watch this movie on VHS?
So it's a film filmed on video. So you're watching video on a
So
VHS.
And I think that works with our 1080p Vizio from 2008.
Yes.
I believe it is.
So I think
it looks all right.
Well, it looks like it does actually look like a Cops episode in many ways.
Yes.
And so it looks right and it looks appropriate for it. And actually, we didn't have too many like flubs or scratches or
no,
pauses.
It's for a rental copy, so it was an unpopular rental copy.
Yeah, it's actually still in pretty good condition
for
it. But it actually feels appropriate to watch it on VHS.
Yeah.
And it does feel like it does have this feel of reality TV. And it doesn't have the Kardashians, it doesn't have like the sheen of a Kardashian.
No, it looks like 90s TV.
Yeah.
Maybe we should have watched it on a CRT TV. We still have 2 left in this house. Yeah. And so the last question, the big question, which I think the answer is obvious. Question 5, will we ever watch it again? And I think the answer is maybe we need to bring friends over and make them watch this movie.
This is a film that we're going to make people watch and say, "What do you think of this?"
Yes.
Now this doesn't always work. Actually, there's this film called Little Otek, and I was reading a film. I follow a page, different film things on Facebook, and they were talking about Little Otek, and I was like, oh. Yeah, we made a friend of ours watch it, and she hated that film.
Yeah, she still was and actually went and told other friends, make me watch this movie.
So sometimes our taste is not everyone's taste. But it is a film worth watching.
Yes.
I mean, with the understanding that there's a lot of violence in the film.
There's a lot of violence. Again, the production values are cheesy. And, I mean, it is a premise that is a step beyond our reality.
Yeah.
But if you suspend disbelief a little bit, the payoff is tremendous.
And it actually has a lot to say. You kind of have to read between the dark humor.
Yes.
You have to read between the lines, but there's a lot that this film is trying to say.
And maybe it was the fact that we've seen it 3 times now.
Yes, this is true. Yes. But we'll definitely watch it again. And as Matt said, we're probably going to be forcing some friends in the future to watch it with us.
Yes.
I think that's it.
That is it.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.